Welcome back. Babajide Ogunsanwo joins us now, our data and information analyst. Thank you for coming on today. Again, inflation rate. We've seen the arguments go back and forth between the regulatory authorities. You've seen the current rate and the previous rate, and you did some comparative analysis. What did you find?
Yeah, so the inflation rates, we have the discussion on interest rates. So today, can we talk about even interest rates without really talking about the things Nigerians are interested about, and also the things Nigerians are not interested about? And so, a third of a century ago, what were Nigerians interested about? And I'll share those facts with you briefly, and I think it will surprise you. But today, there are three things Nigerians are interested about. Yes, the inflation rate and monetary policy is even number 3 on the list, and we'll talk about that. But there are 2 other things that we need to talk about because Nigerians and people are talking about. And it's trended this week. Now, the 2 things are uniforms and the third mainland. And then we'll talk about those 2 first, and then we'll now talk about how it all connects with interest rates. And so we've heard the debate on should the Controller General of Customs wear his uniform or he shouldn't. Can we decide here today on should he wear or shouldn't wear? No, we can't. We can't take that decision here. But there's one thing we can talk about, and that is if indeed he even has to wear a uniform, what color will this uniform be? And so this week I drove around and I went to NACO to look at the uniform of the customs. And I also then went to the Seme-Cotonou border, and I looked at the uniform of the customs. And I was shocked that there are different shades of gray. So today, if we were to even attempt to sew a customs uniform. Not that we've decided, or not that we think it's right or wrong.
That we expect to be summoned by the Senate.
Or not that we expect to be summoned by the Senate. So we can't take a decision if he should wear or not. But even if he were to wear, what shade of gray
will it be?
So is there a standard shade of gray for the customs uniform? So what you find today is the shade of gray worn by the junior officers is indeed different from the shade of gray worn by the senior officers. And so today, even if he did appear at the Senate, perhaps they will tell him his uniform isn't even the right shade. So the debate isn't just about should he wear the uniform. The debate is much more than that. What is the shade of the uniform? Is there a standard?
So how do you connect the dots?
And so here's why we should consider this. And it's because UNICEF recently said there were 10 million young children out of school. That's what the country director, John Gore, said. Here's what it really meant. It meant that there are 10 million young Nigerians that have no uniforms to wear. It simply means there are 10 million young Nigerians that have no identity, no recognition. How can you reward someone, a young boy and girl, that can't be recognized? Now, what is 10 million Nigerians that have no uniforms? So the Third Mainland Bridge, approximately 12 kilometers by 30 meters. Now, if you work the arithmetic carefully and you look at the feet of young boys and girls, the final analysis is that the Third Mainland Bridge in Lagos can hold 9.5 million young children, both sides. So picture Third Mainland Bridge filled with empty young boys and girls, naked young boys and girls without uniforms.
Why
exactly.
naked?
Because they have no uniforms. And so today, the discussion on uniforms, based on UNICEF's report and how it all connects, is that there are 5 states that UNICEF says that in each of these states, there are 500,000 plus young students between the age of 6 and 11 who have no uniforms to wear.
So how does it affect the interest rate?
And so today, if we gradually get to that point, what we are saying is in essence that there are some things that we should be interested about. So there are things that we should be interested about. The inflation rate is one of the things that we are interested about. But there are other things that families are bothered about.
In essence, which are more important?
Which are more important to families. But let me get back to how it all moves towards today's interest rates and inflation rates. Today, the most recent reports we have, yes, the NPR is 14%, but how did this all start? Where we're coming from, sometimes it's important to clearly know where we're heading to. And so, just after the president was sworn in, let's go back into history. The first meeting of the MPC, July 23 and 24, had all 12 members in that meeting. All 12 members that are mandated based on the MPC's committee. So we've got 4 deputy governors, you've got 3 members appointed from the president, you've got 2 members from the board of directors, you've got 2 members that the central bank governor also appointed, and you've got the central bank governor. All 12 members were in that meeting. After that meeting, we've had 10 other meetings of the Monetary Policy Committee. We've never had up to those 12 members present. So the question you will ask is, immediately after the president was sworn in, the first Monetary Policy Committee meeting had all 12 members. As at when the decision to raise the NPR to 14% was taken last year, July, only 5 members voted to increase the NPR to 14%. In essence, it simply means 2 things. The first is, after the president was sworn in, an initial Monetary Policy Committee meeting that had all 12 members, when the decision to raise the NPR was taken to 14%, less than half of the MPC members took that decision. So only 5 members voted to increase the NPR to 14%. Today, let's compare the monetary policy rates across some key countries, especially Nigeria and Ghana. What you'll find is you'll find something that converges and something that diverges. On the monetary policy rate, Ghana's NPR higher than Nigeria, 25.5%, compared to ours of 14%. In the US and England, the monetary policy rate is below, the equivalent is below 1%. And we see South Africa in the middle, 6.3%. So yes, Nigeria is not is not the highest, we don't have the highest rate when it comes to that benchmark rate. We have Ghana higher. However, if we look at the inflation scenario, our inflation rate is higher than that of Ghana. So at 17.8% compared to Ghana's 13.3% and South Africa's 17%, what does this narrative mean? It simply means that Ghana has a pro-consumer policy because they are looking at, they have a lower inflation rate, even though the policy rate is higher. Well, in our own case, which is not necessarily wrong, we have a pro-business policy. And so the monetary policy rate here is lower, pro-business, even though inflation is higher. Is a pro-consumer environment, which Ghana currently has, better than a pro-business? Not necessarily. What we need to drive towards is to have a pro-business and pro-consumer economy.
That will stabilize it.
That is what we need to drive to, similar to what is available in the US and in England.
But will that bring down the inflation rate?
No, not necessarily. It depends on what our goals are. At the moment, the goal does seem to be pro-business, and that is to ensure that businesses, and so we see a lot of emphasis on the agricultural credit scheme and from the CBN, trying to ensure that the borrowing rate to businesses is lower. So pro-business is good, pro-consumer is good, but the focus should be pro-business and pro-consumer.
All right, Babajide Ogunsanwo is our data and information analyst. Thank you for coming on this morning. We'll be back in a moment. Don't go away.